You know, we look in the mirror and see gray hairs popping up. We see it happen with our dogs. But then there are our cats. They just seem to have this secret to eternal youth, at least on the outside. Their fur stays so vibrant year after year. So, what is their secret? Let's get into the pretty amazing biology behind it.
Okay, so just think about any older cat you've ever known. Yeah, they might slow down a bit, maybe nap a little more as they get into their golden years. But there's one thing that almost always stays the same, right? The color of their fur.
I mean, for us, gray hair is one of the first most obvious signs that we're getting older. It can start in our 30s even. But for cats, nope. It's just not the same story. Think about it. If they went gray like us, every single old cat would eventually just be a white cat. And we know that's not what happens.
So what's going on? What is it about their biology that lets them just skip the whole graying thing? Well, the answer is hiding deep down in their hair follicles. And to figure it out, we actually have to start by looking at why we go gray.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can get to why cats don't go gray, we need a quick look at why we humans do. And it all comes down to a really specific kind of cell.
All right, let me introduce you to the melanocyte. You can think of these as tiny little pigment factories. They're hanging out at the bottom of every single hair follicle, and they have one job: to pump out melanin. That's the stuff that gives our hair its color, black, brown, red, you name it. They basically inject that color into each hair as it grows.
Now for us humans, this whole system has a shelf life. As we get older, those little factories start to get worn out. It's due to something called oxidative stress, which is really just a fancy term for all the normal wear and tear on our cells. So what happens? The factories slow down, and eventually the supply of stem cells that makes new factories, well, it just runs out. And the result is exactly what you'd expect. New hair starts growing, but there's no pigment going into it. That's what we see as gray or even white hair.
Okay, so that's us. But what about cats? What's going on inside their fur that makes their pigment factories just keep chugging along for so long?
And here's the key difference. The current thinking is that it's one of two things. Either cats are just born with way more of these pigment factories for every hair, or their factories are just tougher. They're more resilient. They break down at a much, much slower rate. So, we might start seeing gray hairs pop up in our 30s, but a cat, they might not show a single speck of gray until they're like 17 or 18 years old. That's ancient in cat years.
And that really gets to the heart of it. As Catster puts it, some cats will go gray, but others won't change color at all, and both are totally normal. So while graying can happen, it's just not that universal sign of aging that it is for us or even for dogs. For a cat, staying the same color its whole life is perfectly normal.
Okay, but you might be sitting there thinking, hang on a second, I'm pretty sure I've seen white hairs in a cat before. And you're probably right. It definitely does happen. It's just usually not for the same reason we go gray. So let's talk about the exceptions to the rule.
So, when a cat does get white hairs, there's usually a specific reason. The most common thing you'll see is just a light salt and pepper look, usually around the muzzle on a really old cat. A more dramatic cause, though, is scarring. If a cat gets an injury or a burn, the hair that grows back over that spot often comes in white. And then there are the rarer causes, like really severe stress or a skin condition called vitiligo, which can cause these cool snowflake patches where the fur loses its color.
All right, so going gray or white isn't the only color change cat owners might see. There are a couple of other really common things that can happen to a cat's fur that have absolutely nothing to do with getting old.
And this is probably the biggest one. Have you ever looked at a black cat, maybe your own, and thought, is your fur turning reddish? It's a kind of rusty color. What's up with that? Well, there are usually two main culprits here. The first one is super simple: the sun. Yep, just like our hair can get lighter in the summer, a cat that loves to sunbathe can actually have its dark fur bleached by the UV rays, giving it that rusty look. The other reason is all about nutrition. To make that dark black pigment, a cat's body needs an amino acid called tyrosine. If their diet doesn't have enough of it, they literally can't produce the black pigment and their coat starts to look reddish instead.
So we've pretty much solved the graying mystery, but the science of cat fur has even more cool tricks up its sleeve. To show you just how wild and complex it can get, I want to share one last, really fascinating fact.
Check this out. Cat fur color isn't always set in stone, and Siamese cats are the perfect proof. They actually have a kind of temperature-sensitive albinism. This means the enzyme that makes their dark pigment only works in cooler temperatures. That's why their points,
Their ears, paws, face, and tail are dark because those are the coldest parts of their body. Their warmer torso stays light. And get this, it's also why Siamese kittens are born completely white. They've been all cozy and warm inside their mother's womb.
And that really brings us back to the big answer. In a nutshell, cats don't go gray like we do because their pigment-producing cells, those little melanocyte factories, are just way more robust and resilient. They're built to last. Whether it's because they have more of them or they're just tougher, their system is just so much better at handling the aging process than ours is.
So, while your cat's fur might not give away their age, it kind of makes you think, right? What are the other, more subtle signs of aging you've noticed in your seemingly timeless pet? It's a good reminder that there's always more going on than what we see on the surface.